Take 3. All right. Yo, it's cracking fools. You know who it is. Big Bad Sentrock back at it again. Here with episode 7. Here with a very special, important guest that I'm really excited to get into and introduce the audience to. I think we can learn a lot, you know, and I'm excited to really get into the ins and outs of what you do and your business and everything. So without further ado, give it up for Ivan Lopez. All right.
Thank you.
Can
man.
you add
Thank you for the invite.
Nah, thank you. I appreciate you, bro, making time. Because the other day you came by the studio and we're working on a project and we just started talking. And I was like, man, I got to have a conversation with you on the podcast because I know a lot of people would learn from it and take from it a lot of dope, you know, valuable information, especially creatives. So many creatives work with so many agencies, vice versa, and brands and everything. And yeah, so if you don't mind, you know, introducing yourself again, letting people know where you're from, born and raised, all that kind of, and what you do, you know, your title or your business role, whatever.
Yeah. Well, I think that day that we came was funny because it just felt like really natural. We were going into just bouncing around a bunch of different ideas. And I had previously watched some of your segments and I'm a fan because I definitely think that what you're trying to do of inspiring folks is something that is needed in our community so that more and more kids understand different paths and potential that is out there beyond kind of like your standard, more well-known careers, right? Like different career paths. So I think that was cool. And it really got me thinking. I was like, hell yeah, I would like to come around and chat about what I do and how I came about to kind of be in my space that I am right now, which is the advertising world, right? And running a boutique agency that caters to like Fortune 500 companies has been a pretty interesting ride. And a lot of the stuff, twists and turns of it have been by chance and by just fostering more relationships and collaborating with folks like yourself to get inspired and then interject into a conversation on behalf of a brand. Right. So I've been running Elemento we're about to be 10 years old.
Congrats on that.
The 11th of this month. And there's been several times when I'm like, man, that's it. And by faith and hard work and just like perseverance, we continue to push forward.
Right.
And each year is like another riddle, you know, because in the marketing world, things change so drastically that Instagram wasn't around like that when we first started. TikTok wasn't even, see how easy it was going to be to create original content and be doing a lot of storytelling.
Yeah.
So all that has been really interesting, how our agency, starting as a multicultural agency focusing on what we call below the line, event activations, public relations, doing some community work for different organizations, but really diving into sports marketing and entertainment. That has been our sweet spot to cater to brands like Coca-Cola and Target, Heineken, and others throughout the years that have really given us an opportunity to like collaborate with really cool, smart people that are like just driving the messages of those brands forward, and us as a smaller shop being able to contribite to that and make some really cool things happen has been really dope.
I just want to reverse a little bit because there's a lot you said that I really want to like dive into and really dissect. Okay. So real quick, if you don't mind, just introduce like where'd you grow up?
Right here in Pilsen.
Right here in Pilsen.
1724 West 17th Street.
Yeah.
It's my went to Pilsen Academy.
That's dope, man. And then what was your first experience in the field you're in now, in this industry?
In the field, it's been, I think the most memorable moment is just arriving late to the first big like concert production that I had to do. My role was just to pick up the manager from the hotel and take him to the venue.
Yeah.
And I didn't know the hotel, the ins and outs, and in downtown. So just 5 minutes late, that manager was like, dude, you don't do this in show business.
Yeah.
In marketing, you only get one take. So the whole ride down Lakeshore Drive from downtown to the area, he gave it to me. And then the whole show, he gave it to me. But then I did a good job, so he recouped. And at the end of the show, he's like, "Hey, sorry to be tough on you, but don't start like that ever again."
That's a good through the fire, you know.
A good start.
Yeah, that you really want to, be in that industry. Sometimes you got to prove yourself.
Yeah, you get one take. That's what he kind of emphasized. He's like, and if you start off late, it could snowball in a production world.
Right.
So be ready, be dialed in, and be on time.
And did you continue to work for that manager, or did you go a different route?
I played in the music side for a while.
Okay.
And by that, I mean that I was in charge of like getting sponsorships for some of the concerts, or just managing the partnerships that were already in place with venues like the Aragon and local promoters here from like Volume Entertainment. So that was kind of like my first break, working with Frank on in college, and just helping them with a clean and clear promotion, just getting folks to participate in it, and then later documenting it.
Yeah.
And then later actually creating like ideas that would generate a connection with folks. Yeah.
And how old were you during this time?
I mean, I started in the business when I was like 19. I was a sophomore in college.
So when you got that talk, you get one chance. How old were you then?
I was in college. I was like about
19, 20.
Junior year, complete like world was all over the place.
You know what's crazy? I hate to be the old man, but nowadays you tell somebody like, yo, you get one chance, you're out of here. Younger us or younger me, or nowadays a lot of kids are like, all right, well, I'm out then. You know what I mean? Because it's hard for a lot of us to take that little spanking. You know what I mean? That little spanking. Like,
I think I was kind of used to it, in a way, because my grandfather was that type of a manager and a leader, like in his businesses, and I would get the wrath sometimes just because I was being nosy and wanting to partake in whatever he was doing. And I got that. So it's kind of when I went into my career and I had some characters that were like that were tough and in your face. I kind of had some experience with what that looked like.
So during this time, you were in the music side of things. And then how long were you doing music stuff?
I did music for like about 7, 8 years. More on the promoter side. So I worked, my initial part of my career was on the promoter side with clubs and concerts, but then brands started to want to do things around like the land billboards for Heineken. That was like the first time when I got to collaborate with Heineken. So we were doing like a talent search around several cities, and then taking them to Miami and giving these like aspiring artists an opportunity to meet different producers, writers, record label executives, and try to give them a shot.
Yeah. And what was your role during this time?
My role in that time was, surprisingly, at that early age, I got a chance to actually figure out how to take a big idea from an agency and connect it to the grassroots where it made sense, like functionally. How to get the artists, how to have it in a nightclub and not disrupt the night and make it lame. Some of these artists are coming up, so you never know how the crowd's going to respond.
Can you give me an example of an event or an artist that you worked with? Or a club,
that I've worked with in what capacity?
Like at that time, like during that time, you said you had to secure the artist, and then you had to connect them with a club or maybe a walkthrough or something.
Yeah. So the name of the program was Heineken Estrella, right?
Okay.
And all the talent was local. There was a bunch of kids that, in a way, they were aspiring to sing, but none of them were kind of like the complete. Had it figured out, which is hard, and it's understandable at that age. The ones that we took, in my point of view at that time, they were more for fun. Like I don't know if they were like extremely serious and dialed in on how it was supposed to go versus how you see kids now. And some of the names I can't even remember them, like off the top of my head, as far as like who those kids were.
Well, it's probably so different back then too. The idea of like being on or being professional or making it. Now, it seems like, I don't know, it seems like it might be easier because you have direct access to fans. Then it seemed like, 10 years ago.
Demos were CDs, some were tapes.
Still, yeah.
That were arriving for us to kind of figure out, all right, let's give this one a shot. And then in some markets, it was so hard that we just did like a karaoke night. And they're like, yo, who's brave enough to get in front of a mic? And then you'd see some folks that had some talent. And it was interesting for those type of folks because once you took them to look at it from a professional perspective, you could see their like mind spinning on like, oh, like, so this is how I could go about it and maybe perform at a restaurant consistently and know how to go about it, how to look at my presence, how to like sing. Because that was a good thing that Heineken was bringing, like folks that knew how to create an artist to advise these folks that normally wouldn't have a shot to be told, this is how you should do it.
It sounds like artist development.
Yeah.
For like music labels.
It was like sponsored by Heineken.
Yeah. And there was no like hook as far as like, oh, if we find you, we give you a contract. This was more like, hey, we could put you in a room with decision makers and experts of the music space. Come through to this nightclub, send us your demos, we'll confirm you, or come to this opening karaoke night, open mic night, and do it. And we did it for land music, and we did it for hip hop too, where I remember we were with like Sean Paul and having some kids from the South singing, and they had a dope style before like that crunk came in. So it was interesting to have like
old school reggaeton stuff.
I think it was more natural for the hip hop side, because artists are used to just like going, grabbing the mic and rocking it out. Whereas in the bland billboards, there would be some folks that would come in with an instrument and play like some ballads, or there would be some folks that would come in with reggaeton, and it was kind of a combination.
Yeah.
So interesting.
Okay. So
you guys remember Aztec that signed to he was out of Houston. He signed with Rock La Familia for Jay-Z, Colombian kid. He had like one song that he did with Slim Thug. So we had him on that program.
Yeah.
And we collaborated with him, and it was funny to like be hanging out with him and like Prince from Rap A Lot. And like going from club to club. Yeah, with Jay Prince, and like that was at an early age, bro. I didn't even know, like, I was like, man. And then later I'm like, holy shit, I was hanging out with those folks, with this artist and doing this and that.
Yeah. That's how it was back then. You didn't really know. Now we Google everything. Oh, I know this person. If you don't know somebody, you look them up real quick. Like, you know everything they did. You know everything's documented. Back then, it was like you're just floating and going through, you know, life and figuring it out.
Now, the only way you could kind of identify certain of those career paths was like if it was written in a book, right? Like,
exactly.
Look at the biographies and all that. But like for stuff that's like going on right now, like you could do it where you just follow the right folks and you kind of see what they do. Right. In order for you to kind of get in that lane, that was not there.
Exactly. Okay, so that was the music, and then so you were working for that agency?
I was working for a promoter.
A promoter, okay.
And who happened to get interest from an agency to execute at the grassroots level. And that's really where I woke up, where I was like, okay, I could stay the music route, which I did do a lot of like the back end production of concerts and like touring with like reggaeton artists like Ivy Queen and Don Omar and all that stuff on behalf of the company that I work for. But what I really liked was the brand side.
Sorry. Like touring?
Yeah. Yeah, like hopping around.
Did you like that?
It was fun at first, and then when you have to like just be in charge of like making sure everyone is good, that the artist is good, that the logistics and all that stuff, you do it over and over, it kind of becomes like Groundhog's Day. And
were you a road manager?
Huh? I was just representing the buyer that actually hired the artist. So basically, the promoter will buy a tour and then resell it, right? So I was going to those local promoters representing the one that bought it and just making sure that the production was fine, the artist performed, they got paid, everyone got paid, and then on to the next one. So it was a combination of like manager, but there was a manager underneath me that dealt with the artist. I just had to tell him and make sure that, okay, everything that you request is all good. And then go to the promoter and be like, hey, you got everything, production's right. And then making sure we got paid so then we could pay.
So you're kind of like the manager, like between those two kind of worlds.
So that was a good thing about working for a smaller company coming in, is that I got to see so many different lanes and ultimately pick brands. Like I thought, you know what, I liked what I did with Heineken, and I could see myself doing that longer. So then how can I get closer to the agency and eventually to the brand to be able to kind of do more things and not just be on the receiving end of a plan and executing? Can I help come up with the plan? And then that's why I left.
That's tight.
Yeah.
And then what was that like leaving? Did you already know your next step?
No.
Or did you're like, I don't know what it is, but I need to figure it out, because you know what is in your head.
I had reached the ceiling there and I didn't see me going anywhere else. But I didn't have a plan. I wasn't going to leave. But then I got approached to go to Las Vegas to open up a music venue. And that was like my first break because they offered me a full salary that was more than I was making here. Here I was sacrificing because I knew I was learning so much.
Right.
That was.
You started from the ground up.
Yeah, I was like, I was a sponge. Go to Vegas and go into opening up a new venue with the attorneys that were the attorneys of my bosses here. So I wasn't taking that bad of a risk. We go there, and in Las Vegas, everyone goes there and hangs out, right? So then one of my buddies that was my mentor invited me to go to the agency side once I was there. And he did it in an interesting way. He invited us to the fight of Oscar de la Hoya against Mayweather.
Oh my
God! And he was there with brands, right?
You went to that fight?
So he was there with brands.
Man, I was joking. I don't know if it was on camera, but I said the most interesting man, and then it was a joke. But yo, you got so much. All right, go ahead, bro.
So he was there with brands.
Yeah.
He was there. He later became my business partner. So Marco Lopez hits me up. He's there working with Washington Mutual. They were sponsoring that show. And then he's like, hey, you want to, oh, nonchalant. I'm in town. What's up? What's going on? I'm like, all right, what do you want to do? And he's like, well, I'm going to the fight, but anything else between that, I'm down. He's like, and if you want to go to the fight, let me know. I'm like, what, bro? I'm down. Like, where are you? Of course, yeah. So, I got hospitality on, and I'm like, let's go. So somehow I was able to get him some tickets to Juanes for that concert. So then we did that. We did the fight. And that's what I met a brand manager from the band perspective. And just seeing how they activated the fight. It was a hospitality play, hosting different folks from all over the country and doing business, financial stuff. But then at the end of the financial side of it, going and having fun and watching one of the best boxing matches that you could have. So, two of the greatest. Yeah, so then that cemented to me like my North Star. I was like, man, I want to go there, like, oh, right. Yeah, I mean, it felt right to be like in dope seats watching a fight that I had never even gone to a boxing match. This was my first boxing match, and it was that one. Yeah, and it's like from there, where do you go? I remember watching all the Mike Tyson and Chavez and all that growing up, so I knew the culture of boxing. Mm-hmm. But I'm there watching that fight, and I'll send you. I still got the ticket. A little memento. Yeah,
send me a picture. That's sick. Okay, so you're living in Vegas at this time. You're helping a music venue, mm-hmm. And then you're a part of the agency, and that was advertisement agency, mm-hmm. Correct? Okay. So then you joined the agency.
Yeah, like about a year later.
Okay.
Same guy tells me, hey, you want to come and work on the AT&T account for music? AT&T wants to start working with a lot of music artists doing like album releases back then, but at all the AT&T stores that were like Hispanic messaging. So I was like a way for them to work, get phones out, get Sony to participate, bring artists. So my role was just to kind of do the programming and then to advise on tours, like which tour should we pick up. Mm-hmm. So then we picked up Enrique Iglesias Aventura tour. So I managed like that relationship and went around. Yeah, it was pretty insane. And just the fact that at that point, Enrique Iglesias was a name, but Aventura was just coming up so hard that they would flip-flop who would close in the headline because there was so much cred for Aventura, and Aventura was just like climbing. And it was interesting to see that dynamic. And just now I came back home and I was collaborating with my peers that were producing the show. So the same company that I used to work for produced that show here, but I was just on the brand side. It was a hell of a lot easier. Yeah. Wasn't running around like crazy, but it was cool to just come back like full circle and now being a little bit on the brand side, even though it was for like a year. Then I went to soccer.
Okay. And how old were you during that time?
By then I was 27.
27. So it's 7 years of you being in that industry. Yeah. Learning, developing, getting your resume down, all that.
I also shifted to the agency side, which my son was born and he broke that myth of like what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. So that shit didn't happen. It didn't work. So my son is like, I'm like, man, he's gonna be a dope kid because he's like breaking myths already and shit. So that made me want to get out of nightlife and Vegas and go more PG and go into like marketing. So I'm like, telecommunications, yeah, I'm down. Let's go. So I went into marketing on that side.
Okay. So you do...
I'm 27, 28 around that time.
And was this like a sports agency, a marketing agency?
It was called Relay Worldwide, and they did a little bit of everything. They had sponsorship consulting, they had general market brands, they had a huge Hispanic multicultural team, which my friend from the match, he was one of the directors there. So he's the one that pulled me into his group. As his group was growing, he needed more folks, and he wanted some from a music angle. Yeah.
Like it?
I loved it.
Yeah.
To me, it was like, okay, I got here. Now, like, stay here, right? Because I remember the interview process took like about 6 months. I had to like talk to so many people, but it worked because I wasn't in a hurry to get out of Vegas. So I'm like, yeah, more interviews. Yeah, no, just let me know when, no problem. So it just kind of took this process, and then I was able to get in.
And that was based out of here?
In Atlanta. The company had an office here. Yeah. Because they're part of like the Publicis and Leo Burnett, that whole network. So then they had an office in Atlanta, and then the main hub was here. They sent me to Atlanta.
So you're in Atlanta
for 1 year.
For 1 year doing sports marketing. And then at what point did you start your own
my own shop?
Your own, yeah.
Well, it wasn't my dream. It was my business partner's dream, Marco. Same guy from the boxing fight.
Yeah.
So he was
is it because you were comfortable with what you're doing, or was it because you just like your partner just had that like clicking in his head, like, yo, I want to do this?
It was for me. I was still learning, so I feel like just like I felt at one point I was tapped out on the club side and venue management side and promoter side. At the agency, there's no way. There was just so much that I was still learning. I was already learning the managerial side of running an agency, but and it was mainly due to my mentor Marco, who later became my business partner. But it was his idea. It was his idea of wanting to kind of have a business that he could basically run and figure out how to get more like-minded Latinos in the advertising space, more diversity. He's really big on that. He still is. So we wanted to create a shop that basically we could drive our own lane. When we were inside, they dictated what we wanted to do. Our program, even though we were generating a good amount of revenue, didn't get the support that the general market accounts got. So we were kind of like the little machine that could. And he said, well, they're not going to give us the resources. Then what's the point of being inside? Let's go outside. We'll have little resources, but we could maybe figure something else out. So it was pretty crazy at the time. My son was 3 years old, and I was like, I don't know if this is a move, but I just took a plunge, and he offered me a job. He didn't really offer me to be his partner. I doubled down and said, if I'm going to jump out, I want to be your business partner. He looked at me like, this little shit, like, what does he think he is? And then I said, I'll even put some money in. I didn't even know. By then, I was just throwing, like just haymakers. Yeah. And he's like, he thought about it, took a couple conversations. And when I actually put, like cashed out my 401k and like my kids' like retirement, my life insurance, and just threw it all in. And I said, I'm in, let's go. And I bet on myself.
It wasn't just words. It was actual.
I had to tell him
your livelihood on it.
Like he was a dreamer. I basically put together the business plan and the numbers. My background is finance and marketing from DePaul. Okay. So I kind of put both together, put the vision together that he kind of laid out. But then I figured out how to get there because he's a big dreamer. And I was like, all right, let me plug it in. That's why we worked, because there's like big ideas and I followed through with the execution. So that's how it worked out. That jumped out, made the business plan, and then started it with Beam Global as our first client.
Beam Global?
Yeah, working on tequila. So thank you for giving me the
so that's...
it's a full circle.
That's dope, man.
Salsa, tequila, tres generaciones, stuff like that.
That's dope. Okay, so now I feel like smaller boutiques are way more common than maybe they were back then. I feel like I hear so many agencies and so many new ones that pop up. How is it now in today's market with where I guess your company's at? And then also, like you have the big players, then you have the boutiques. Can you kind of break that down of what that even means?
Yeah, I think the reason why it's kind of working out that way is because things are changing so rapidly. Media consumption, interactions, all how brands are doing their thing, that the bigger the organization you are, the harder it is to change on with the twists and turns. So if you're a smaller shop, then you can pivot. Like even the pandemic, imagine the conversations that needed to occur, which I know what they are, but basically in a bigger group, when you're paying rent at the merchandise mart for like a whole floor versus when you're a smaller shop that you're more accustomed to just less square footage or less personnel and less things that you could kind of wind down and weather the storm, you know? So things like that I feel have been attractive from just a practical sense, a business sense. From a creative side, I just think that I just feel like the nimbleness and the ruggedness of like a small boutique, the excitement that every year kind of feels like a startup because your clients are constantly changing the game on you. Right. There's less and less folks in the executive level that I see from brands perspective, CMOs and even like just brand managers that stick around for a long time with certain brands. So you could be rocking it out and you'll still get your walking papers and be like, hey, good looking out. Thank you. It's nothing that you've done, but we're going to go with another agency.
What does that mean, walking papers?
So basically they tell you that you don't get any more contracts, right? Like
thanks.
Like I, for example, have master agreements with certain brands that I cannot work with anybody in their category because I'm vested in their relationship.
Right.
So my team is vested in their relationship, so we dial in on that. When they give you like the walking papers, which it's only happened once, it's been kind of like they're restacking their deck as far as like the type of agency mix that they need. Maybe they need more experts in like a certain field. Yeah. So instead of having a bunch of agencies inside certain, like that, say for instance, a Coca-Cola could pick on, they will restructure those periodically to make sure that they have different agencies in the circle.
Okay, so let me ask you this: you were talking about the benefits of being a smaller boutique. So what's the downside to maybe being smaller? Do companies and brands look at you like, oh, you're a little bit too small for what we need?
That's it. You hit it right in the nail. I think that it's.
And what does that mean? Being too small?
It's almost like them understanding. Can you really handle that scale of a program? Right. And is your bandwidth there? You know, sometimes it could mean, do you have all the right personnel to do it, or do you have the capital to cash flow it? Because now more and more like certain brands pay you net 90, net 60. If I hit you up and I'm like, yo, Rock, hook me up with this, but I'm gonna pay you in like 90 days, you're probably like, I don't know, Ivan. Right. You know, it's gonna take a conversation. Right. So that's the piece that is complicated. I feel like from a financial perspective, that's a downfall. I think also maybe the lack of having that network or the prestige. If you want to attract top talent, then they might want to go to a bigger name because it's good for their career. I feel from our perspective, when you come to a smaller boutique, I feel like you get more experience. And if some of the folks want to get there quicker, then where you could kind of see a chaoticness and a lot of different angles is going to push your growth quicker than if you're siloed where there's so many layers in a bigger organization that it'll take you longer to open up your world as far as like what's out there. That makes sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. But my brain is still like catching up. You know, when it's like downloading and it's like slowly like, because that's a lot that I feel like as an independent artist, I'm just like, wow, like there's so much to that side that like, I know you don't handle it all on your own, but still I would be like, oh my God, like I'm glad I'm not in your shoes because I feel like that seems mad stressful. And then, so then you mentioned about brands might not see that you acquired the top talent. What does that mean like for you and like your team, or you developing your team? Like, so you and your partner started it. How did you go out and start finding, I guess, your team?
And attracting the talent? Well, we had to structure it. Our business plan was like, we're going to be a boutique agency, minority owned, located in Chicago, but catering to both domestically and international, and having top talent and structuring the agency the way we felt needed to be the next stage. So back in the day, experiential marketing was not that great at storytelling. There was no social channels to do it. It makes it easier now to put on an event for a few, but you broadcast it and everybody else enjoys it, right? Like right here, there's 5 of us, and then you could broadcast it and many people will see it, right?
Or as you want to spread it.
So I think that has benefited a lot. And the challenge where it was before was a little bit more challenging to get there from a technology standpoint.
Yeah.
But tell me your question again on that.
Yeah, it was just like when you and your partner started the company,
Mm-hmm.
how did you secure or find the talent? And then was it just like, yo, this person fresh out of college?
Our network.
We just need the experience?
Our network at first, because you're a startup. I guess there's certain people that like startups and they need that energy.
Right.
But right off the bat, it was our network, folks that we knew, but then also folks that we respected that were in other agencies.
And by network, the key word is relationships.
I remember our big hire that, well, for Marco, my business partner, was having me buy in, but then I felt that a junior partner that was my account executive was worthy enough to be our partner. So we made her a junior partner because she was that dialed in into our space, and we had good chemistry. And we actually brought her on, and then basically through our network, we were able to get the creative director, the account manager, and just little by little started to build it. Once we were 1 year in, then a couple recaps showcasing of what you did, then it was a lot easier. Then we were able to attract folks that we used to collaborate with or compete against, and they're like, yo, you guys are doing some dope stuff. And the accounts were there too. Like when Coca-Cola came on, Disney came on.
Okay, how does that conversation happen? Do you just like send an email like, yo, we're agency, what's good, let's work?
Yeah, there's
Link and build.
There's a lot of ways, man. It's always changing, but there's procurement companies that do matchmaking.
Okay.
So then they're like, all right, tell me about what you do, how you do it, what's your structure. And then when brands tell them, hey, I'm looking for this, they're like, got it, boom, and they connect you, right? And then you go and you pitch ideas, and if you win, you win. If not, no harm, no foul.
Okay, so these companies kind of like the connecting. What do they get from you? Do you send them like a resume? Do you send them your website? Like, how do you prove to yourself like we can do what we?
They're called credentials, like your credit presentation, like your portfolio.
Okay.
And it basically talks a little about what you do, how you do it, and what you've done.
Since you were a new company, how did you pitch yourself if you had no examples in a new business?
It was very aspirational, like a mood board.
And could do this.
Our process and this and that. And we took some stories and some images from stuff that we have done for other companies. And we're pretty straightforward. Like when we worked here, like Ivan worked here and he did X, Y, and Z. Marco worked here, did this and this and that.
Did you ever run into issues with like any kind of contracts or anything like that you had with older clients or anything like that? Or
No, the contract aspect our biggest challenge actually to open our doors was being able to get the type of insurance that you need to be able to deal with those companies. That was the biggest challenge, like from a professional liability standpoint.
$1 million, 100 million.
No, not that crazy, but I mean 2 million or like stuff like that they start asking for different umbrellas, and it always goes up. That when you are only going to an agent and you just have your resume and your track record of what you've done for other agencies, but it's your first company, it's a hard sell.
Yeah,
but we had the guy that's from here, from Pilsen.
Yeah.
That was for us was one of our angels, like to like literally get the ball rolling. Because when we got that, literally like 2 months later, Coca-Cola's like, all right, here's your master agreement letter that I told you about, that basically said that we were worthy to do business for them.
So somebody took a chance on you guys.
Mm-hmm.
But was that relationship prior to that business before?
They knew us from our inside the publicly traded company,
So like they were like vaguely familiar, kind of.
They knew the personalities, but they didn't know so much the industry, and I think that helped because it seemed so clean and safe. It wasn't like I was saying like, hey, I'm gonna go open up a nightclub or do this, I was like, it's an agency, it's communications. And one thing that I remember they were saying is like, just don't go too much into detail, like broad strokes on your storytelling of what you do. Because the minute I'm like, oh yeah, I do events with inflatables, we're not going to give you any of that, right?
Yeah.
But it's like, oh yeah, we consult agency or brands.
Then you kind of leave it up to them to like fill in those blanks.
Kind of, yeah. And it could be just like, or just a quick skim that you don't make them I guess, see more of the dangers that could be part of that industry. But don't share that, because then it's gonna be.
That was my little no, okay, remember that one.
Yeah, I know you're right. Yeah. Don't share the details.
So let's see, what's that
Broad
time?
strokes.
What's that time? All right, a couple more questions, bro. All right, so the reason I wanted to have a conversation with you that really intrigued me, because we started talking, but also as a creative, I work with so many agencies, and it's like nowadays it's super rare. Like, all right, we did this project, Heineken, MLS, Chicago Fire. It's very rare for Heineken to hit me up direct, or it's very rare for like such and such brand to email me direct. And it does happen, but nowadays a lot of my recent work has been through agencies. So how was that for you as an agency, finding talent? Like, I want to understand, how did you come to find me, or how do you come to find other creatives, so other creatives that are listening, they can know, you know what I mean? Like, all right, this is kind of through your lens, how you see things.
I think, well, sometimes when it's brands do find you guys, and there's like some of my clients have folks inside that literally are in charge of building relationships with the artistic community across a bunch of different initiatives. With this particular program with Heineken, it was more of an inspiration of trying to deliver something around the game of soccer, celebrating the fans, knowing that we were not in the stadiums and being able to get close to the game that we love. And I figured that the best storytelling had to be from folks that understand and have the pulse of the community. And I see artists as those like strong community leaders, and I feel like storytellers
Reflecting
that
what's
really
going
capture and reflect on what the vibe is. So knowing how artists this year have been reflecting a lot of the tough things that have been happening, I wanted to kind of bring some like celebratory fandom vibe to the conversation around the game of soccer. And I had been watching you I had your sneakers, the Converse, and that was like the first encounter. And I saw you more and more. Our friend Manny from Juggernaut put me onto you too. He's like, dude, that dude's dope. He's like, great to work with. So just like filed it back of our head, right? So when the concept kind of evolved for Chicago, I knew who I wanted to go with. And now it was just a matter of like selling it into the brand, that letting them know about who you are, what you do, and kind of giving that perspective. And it really helped that.
Was that a hard sell?
No, it wasn't, because Chicago Fire was like, hell yeah, we're down, because they were already collaborating with you, which I didn't know.
So you had to get approval from the team and then the brand.
Yeah, we collaborated with all three just to make sure that everyone was aligned. I remember I asked you, like, yo, do you like soccer? Is it a sport? And you're like, hell yeah. And it was like, that was one like requirement, without telling you that it was a requirement, because we wanted to be kind of like organic, and you were already a fan. I'm like, dope. So that was cool. That was one thing that it was easy for you to find.
Okay, that's dope. Okay, what was my other question? That was my only question. Yeah. I'm done. Thank you. All right, wrap it up.
We're done. Thanks.
No, and then so the follow up on that too was just how, I guess, accessible you were. Like I said, I work with a lot of agencies, and sometimes I'm like, what do you even do? Like, what's the difference between like ad agency, marketing agency? And then sometimes when I'll be on these conversations, I talk to like 6 different people. And when I talk to you, I was like, oh, this is dope. Like, I could talk to you direct. You're letting me know your vision, where your heart's at. And so I really appreciated that, when we talked. And yeah, I don't know if that's how you always work, or what is next for you. Like, what do you feel, I guess, yeah, what is next for you? Because you have your pulse on the community and the culture, and you're very accessible. But do you feel like you like where you're at, or do you feel like, all right, you know what, I want to go global, I want to be big, I want to blow up and not talk to nobody?
No, I definitely don't want to do that.
I mean, I have aspirations, bro.
No, I want to go. I mean,
I'm trying to blow and get out of here.
It's all about going big, but not talking to anyone. Then you're getting siloed. We don't want to be siloed, unless you're like in a really dope spot. I don't know.
That's my aspiration, bro.
Island.
So,
So
you guys have some ideas already. Basically, is what I'm getting.
I got goals, man.
That's no. I think that as far as like where we're at, from my perspective, I feel like it's a natural progression. So as long as I continue to stay motivated as far as like keeping the pulse, that's why I like to be at the front lines. It's kind of like a constant, like having the pulse and getting engaged in some of the programs a little bit deeper. And to be honest, I love soccer. It's one of my favorite passion points, and I love art. I love this community. So it's like in this area, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna be front facing and make sure that I make that connection with you guys, because I see it like as a step one of collaborating with you on one concept, but then we get inspired to do other ththings. My team, obviously, as you've been collaborating with them, they follow through and have concepts. Sometimes Maria Isabel, who you encountered with, gets more ingrained, like with the other markets, and lead that. But for here, it was more personal. That's why you got so much FaceTime.
I appreciate it. Bro.
Yeah, because it feels good. It's like home, our team, like everything. Just a lot of times in our space, a lot of our programs, they're not here in Chicago. So like even some of my family members, like, what do you do, bro? Like, what exactly do you do? You know, because they're like, you don't even work. I'm like, I work, bro. What do you mean? So he's like, right? So they always see me with my kids and soccer stuff. So that's
you had another soccer game. You're like, it's work. What do you want from me?
The lines have been blurred. So what I see is like future path is just to continue to push this agency. I feel like there's never a dull moment in it. I don't ever feel like the agency is exactly where it needs to be. It's always evolving. So for me, it's just focused on delivering on the challenges that the clients present, continue to grow the agency from different spaces, and really like my North Star, what I want to do instead of like, not instead of, but I want to just continue to like inspire more folks in the craft that I do by the work that we do. Not necessarily going and talking and doing a bunch of stuff, but just letting the work do its talking, right? And by letting the work do its talking, it requires me to be engaged with my team and behind the work. So I view it that way. It's just like you wouldn't commission someone to go do your art, right? Because it's personal. Right. For me, the campaigns, they're personal. So it's just really having the pulse and continuing to deliver on those things.
That's good.
And I feel like the rest of it takes care of itself, man. Because if you dial in on the numbers, then sometimes your mind might get blurred just on the numbers. You look at, net revenue and all that shit that the financial people want to look at. But when you go within the passion, is just make sure that what you're doing and the passion and the effort that you're putting behind it is getting compensated accordingly, but that you don't limit your passion into it, Find people that will recognize the value and pay you for what you do versus water it down, and maybe it starts not being fun because you're not doing all the bells and whistles that you want to do. Right. So that's why I play in that space with those clients that like to go big, and I'm ready for that challenge.
That's dope, man. It's inspiring, bro. I appreciate you coming through and just having this conversation with me. I feel like it opened up my understanding of what agencies do, what someone in your position does. I know not all agencies are the same, but still it just allows me to, see through your lens a little bit. So it's good. Thank you.
Oh, thanks for having me. Keep inspiring folks, man. You guys are doing a great job. And it's fun to be able to kind of connect folks. I always said that, like, I landed in my space by accident. And as I told you that one day, and it's like, if we could prevent less folks from, getting to your lane, to my lane, not by accident, but like early on, seeing that could be a possibility.
Right.
And then it's up to us to figure out how these big brands that we work with can help make that happen. Like clinics and just internships or all kinds of dope stuff that could happen, so that more kids from Pilsen could be, representing like we're doing.
That's dope. Definitely, bro. I feel like I got so much more, but we'll cut it off right there. I think that was good. I feel like that's enough, for the audience to digest and learn from. And I appreciate it, bro. Thank you.
Good times, man. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right. And that's a wrap.